In this episode, Forza 3 Special Report, Top Sim Cars and Track Tips. Welcome to Inside Sim Racing. I'm your host, Jessica Lopez. I'd like to start off by apologizing for the mispronunciation of the names during our Dirt 2 report. Ken Block and Travis Pastrana, a certain someone who wrote that segment, wrote it incorrectly, so I pronounced it incorrectly. And speaking of someone, I'd like to introduce Sean the Saw Cole to the show.
Hello, and sorry about that, Jess. And I'm the one who should be apologizing to everybody. I'm the one who wrote that portion, and
we all mess up from time to time.
Yeah, I blew that one pretty good.
Now that we've gotten that cleared up, on today's show we have a special pre-launch report on one of the most anticipated racing sims of the year, Forza 3 for the Xbox 360 by Turn 10. And Sean's racing here in his Game Racer, his modified Game Racer.
Modify, that's right. You know, I've been doing a lot of driving in this sucker for a while, and you know, part of a good sim rig is making it yours. We talk about adapting and modifying it all the time. I wanted the shifter higher, and right there, that's where I wanted it. So I used some 80/20 profile tubing. I used this little angle iron bracket that Darren showed everyone on an episode a while back, drilled right into the meaty part of the Fanatic 6-speed shifter, and this thing's mounted on there. I mean, and again, it's a Game Racer in all its glory, and it was a fine mount before, but now I put it exactly where I want it. I made it mine. It's my rig. Get comfy.
And you have it with, this is a Fanatic 6-speed shifter.
Absolutely.
With the Fanatic Porsche 911 Turbo S wheel. And for those of you that don't know out there, this is the original mount here that comes with the wheel. And it just slides right into the wheel here, and I could see how it could be a little bit, you know, not too sturdy.
Yeah, the chopsticks, I like to call them. They work really well for those who are like mounting to the desktop and want to just throw it in the closet at night. But again, when you're using a real rig, you want things just sturdy and where they belong. This is where the shifter goes. So both are good options, but for me, this is the way to go.
And you got the 911 Turbo S wheel mounted onto the Game Racer as well.
Absolutely. There are only two choices on the Xbox for force feedback wheels, and it's this and the Microsoft wheel. This one giving us full clutch support and the shifter support, which the Microsoft wheel doesn't have. So playing a game of this caliber, this is the way I'm going to go.
And this is the setup that we've used here to, you know, review this Forza 3 for most of the review, correct? And
yeah,
how do you like this setup with the Forza 3?
This is outstanding. It's so realistic. The clutch, again, it's like a real clutch. You've got to use the clutch in unison with the gearbox. If you don't, you clang gears. I mean, if you drive it like
Are
a
you
real...
able to stall out on with the clutch here?
Absolutely. Well, no, you can't stall out, which you'd think it could because it's so fantastic and so realistic, but you actually can't stall it, but you do have to shift it real. So heel towing, or, you know, again, you better get the clutch in, or you're going to tear up the gearbox, and it's going to ruin everything during the race.
Interesting. Well, before we get more into that, I'd like to go ahead and give everyone out there the specs on this new title by Turn 10. Forza 3 by Turn 10 comes with over 100 renowned real-world tracks, exotic road courses from around the world, and a host of driving assist and adjustable skill levels. All right, Sean, tell the viewers your favorite part of Forza 3.
I don't even know where to begin. I'm going to tell you, it's the ultra-realistic everything. Cars, tracks, sounds, the physics, the driving, all of it. It's amazing.
There he goes getting high off this game, too.
My head's going to explode. No, you know what? The Turn 10 guys, they really polished this one up. It's a very complete game, sim. It's really good. We put a ton of time in, and therefore we're going to go ahead and score it tonight. Normally we hold off for enough time to really play it. We're going to give it initial scores. We might change them slightly when we come back next year for the GT5 shootout, but that'll be next year.
Speaking of GT5, Polyphony has delayed its release date to March of next year, so our shootout won't be aired probably until spring or summer, mid next year.
And I thought it was coming this year, but yeah, they delayed it again.
Do you think it had anything to do with the release of Forza 3?
Absolutely. This thing is so cleaned up. I mean, I would think that if I saw this come out, I would go back and make sure we were really ready to come to show.
Well, that's going to transition us into our next segment, Top Sim Cars. And today we have our first ever console car on the Top Sim Cars, and it comes straight from this game. In honor of our 911 Turbo S wheel, we're going to be putting the Porsche 911 Turbo in Top Sim Cars.
Yeah, we couldn't find the S version, but we got a turbo. It's pretty darn close.
In addition to that, one of your and Darren's favorite rallying sims out there, Richard Burns Rally. We got the 2003 Subaru Impreza.
That's the one everyone knows, with the big Subaru logo on the side of the car, blue and yellow. It's a very famous car.
And I'd like to give a thanks out there to Myrtle Shahin. That's right, Myrtle Shahin, who actually sent us his scores and suggested Richard Burns Rally. So thank you to you out there.
Yeah, we've been getting more and more people, but he gave us one that we're putting on the list immediately.
And he's our very first viewer that we're using, his recommendation.
Yep.
And our third car is the Corvette
C6R by Team Players. They already have a car up on the list. It's the 1955 Formula One. This one, Bob Russell did it, along with some help from a great friend of the show, Sean Purdy. He's done some work behind the scenes around here, hot laps, all sorts of cool stuff. He had some physics input on it, and it's a great looking car, so we put it on the list.
All right, well, here's our fourth installment of Top Sim Cars.
Sponsored by simraceway.com. Welcome to our fourth installation of top simulation cars of all time, sponsored by simraceway.com.
Home of the one-click install.
Which we use to pick up that R-Factor mod in today's episode.
Yep, the Corvette C6R.
That's one of them, and we have two others, meaning 3 new cars to add to our list, which will get us to top 12, so we're above top 10.
Yeah, big deal, our first console car, too.
Speaking
of which, let's hit the timer, man.
The 911, we'll get to it, and the Subaru. So we've got the 911 here, minute and a half. Let's go. Comes right to us out of Forza 3.
Yeah, this thing is just insanely fast.
Still smoking hot right off the presses.
Speaking of which, this thing beat Sean's drag car in the quarter mile. We drag raced them against each other.
It is a monster horsepower, all-wheel drive. The thing's just a snorting, howling beast. And you know what? Let's talk about snorting, howling beast. The sounds.
Yeah, sounds are incredible. What do we get the sounds?
14 out of 15 for this car, which very, very well deserved. I mean, this car sounds like they have a very unique exhaust note, the Porsches, especially the big badass turbos, and you can hear it roaring. You hear it snort on downshifts.
Yeah, this thing is very nicely done in a lot of ways. Physics, we gave it a 16 out of 20.
Which is very good. And the other score it did extremely well was the models.
Yeah.
Again, it's a gorgeous car. It's got a lot of little flares and wings and inlets, and all of those were covered in the model. It's got the traditional headlights of the new age Porsches. It's just beautiful. It scored a 9.25 out of 10 in models.
Yep.
And that gives us 15 seconds. Any last notes or thoughts?
We should give the overall score.
Overall score, 85.3 out of 100.
So it's right up there on the list.
This is up there with the best of the best.
Yep.
And one of my personal favorites. The other thing is the interior. It's got the distinct dials. That is the end of the clock. So we're going to move right into, we're going to reload the screen, get us all queued up here with the Corvette. So next up, we have the Corvette C6R by Team Players, 4 R-Factor. Get the clock going, minute and a half.
Let's roll it.
So obviously, Darren and I are huge Chevrolet fans. Corvette is the pinnacle of the Chevrolet line, and this is a gorgeous car. The Earnhardts have run it. I think Boris Said's run this car. I think everyone in the world. Yeah,
this thing's still winning today. I mean, this, a version of this car started as I think the C5R. Now it's the C6R. This thing's a beast.
Yeah, and you
Let's
got Bob. We're rolling. We're a minute.
Okay, cool.
Bob Russell is just, when it comes to like.
Let's talk about cockpits. This is up right now.
And that's what I was going to say.
Amazingly done. Very, very cool job.
He's like crazy meticulous when it comes to this stuff, and it's a great thing.
Yeah, we gave it a 9 in our score.
Yeah, which it well-deserved 9. It's as good as it gets.
Physics on this car done by our buddy Sean Purdy.
And it scored a 16, which I believe Sean gave us some scores from his, and he was right about there too. So that's probably a limitation of our factor.
Put Sean's scores up.
Definitely
if we can find
fantastic. I think we can dig those up. Other things that are impressive, the sounds are good.
Yeah, I was not so impressed with the sounds. They were okay. I wasn't all that impressed with them. I think that's where for me, it kind of took a hit. I only think I gave it a, what did I give it?
You gave it 11.5. I gave it a 12, so I got 11.8 out of 15. So there. It's not. Oh gosh, what was I going to say? Again, it's that classic front engine, rear wheel drive. Oh, we're out of time.
You wasted time there. Well, what did we give him a score? Let's give him an extra few seconds there.
Overall score, it got a 78.5 out of 100.
Yeah, up in the 70s lifts there for an ISI car, and I mean that's pretty, starting to be pretty common. Look at the timer there, buddy.
Sorry about that.
That's starting to become a common score, it seems, for a lot of these R-Factor ISI cars.
And I think to an extent there will be certain limitations in the board by the sim. Certain sims are going to favor higher scores in certain categories.
We are going to be efficient, dude. Let's just roll right into the next car.
Look at that.
I got it up.
So the next one is
a Xbox Media Center thing going here, and there's our next car.
The Subaru 03 Subaru. This is for Richard Burns Rally. We're
one of
on
our
the
favorite
clock.
sims.
Absolutely. When it comes to dirt racing, this is a dated sim, and I think to this day, I think nobody's really done the true physics of dirt racing better.
Yeah, speaking of physics, 18 is what I gave it. You gave it a 17.5, which gave it a 17.8 overall. But yeah, physics and Richard Burns. If you guys haven't tried it, you gotta find it. You can bargain bin it. We have it here at our store, and this is not a pitch for it, but you can get it all over the place. It is worth every penny.
The other thing, we are comparing notes on this one. The sounds in this one are insanely good. I mean, when you we would talk about this. When you tear a door off, all of a sudden you hear the sounds coming through an open door.
Yep.
Or if you tear the exhaust off, all of a sudden you hear the sound of open exhaust.
Yep.
I mean, in sounds, it scored a 14 out of 15, which is again as good as it gets.
Let's talk about the damage really quick. Damage model. This is speaking of which, right here we got broken glass and the windshield. You know, you can break gearboxes, you can break all sorts of stuff.
Engine, the brakes, every part of the car will come flying off. I mean, when
wheels will wobble and it upsets the handling big time.
And again, think of the age of this sim. So when you look at how old it is compared to some of these new ones that we're giving classic scores, this one comes in at a 4.5 out of 5 with years behind it.
Yep. Yeah, this is, like I said earlier, this is one of my favorites. We haven't really talked about it much lately. We're going to do more.
Oh, we're out of time. You know, the one thing about this, we kind of sound like we were talking Richard Burns. The Subaru, in particular, is a beast of a car.
Yeah, this thing is a really tough car to drive. It took me a few sessions to get this thing dialed in and drive it properly. 84.5 was our overall score.
And this was actually submitted to us.
By Myrtle is the guy's first name, and he scored an 81.5 overall. So we gave it a little bit, we were a little bit more generous with it.
He didn't know we were such lifelong fans of Richard Burns Rally, perhaps.
Yeah, maybe that's just why he'd sent us a couple others too. But anyway, that's going to do it for number 4.
So it's starting to fill out. Keep submitting your entries. We'll see about getting your entries on the show.
Here's the top 10 list right here. We're showing it for you. It's really starting to fill out, as a matter of fact.
And of course, some of my favorite cars available for sim racing.
All right, so thanks for watching this segment, sponsored by simraceway.com, home of the one-click install. Hope you enjoyed it. And up next will be number 5.
Welcome back to the show, and I'm here with Darren, who looks like he's doing a little bit of drag racing.
Drag racing, indeed.
Here on Forza 3.
Getting prepared for, Sean mentioned we were going to be doing some late night racing tonight, and I'm whooping up on a Porsche right now. Anyway, this is the first title I've been able to do some serious drag racing in. So Sean and I had a blast doing some drag racing last night, so actually I think he took it to me last night, so it's my turn to, I'm practicing my launch here.
All right, well, best of luck to both of you guys.
Thank you. He's going to need it.
Sean did tell the viewers his favorite part of Forza 3. Why don't you tell us the favorite part of Forza 3?
So far, like, you know, I just mentioned this drag racing multiplayer is really cool. You can configure it a ton of ways. Like, let's see, we started last night. I was in a 69 Camaro and Sean was in a Chevelle. So you can configure it a bunch of different ways. The career mode's really cool. I'm really enjoying starting at the bottom, tuning my cars and doing all that stuff. So I'm having a lot of fun with this. This is, man, ranking right up there as one of my favorites. I woke up thinking about this title this morning.
Dreaming about it, huh?
Yep.
All right, well, before we get to Sean and Darren's review of Forza 3, we're going to give you guys another segment of track tips, right, Darren?
Yeah, I'm Darren. That's Sean over there. Yeah, track tips. Last week we did pit exit etiquette, and more it was pit exit or pit etiquette, excuse me. This week we're going to focus on pit entrance. So how to slow down, how to get off the racing line, that kind of stuff. Sponsored by simraceway.com.
Yes, indeed. All right, so we're going to bring you track tips, and after that, we're going to bring you the review of Forza 3, and we're going to be putting it through Inside Sim Racing's new weighted rating scale.
That's a tongue twister, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. That's why I say it very slowly. We already have 2 other titles on there, which is Superstars V8 and Dirt 2. Forza 3 will be the 3rd title, and we're going to see how it races up against the other 2 titles.
Yeah, I don't think those are two going to stand a chance. Dirt actually scored really well. Superstars 59, that didn't really cut it, but this one's, I think it's going to top the list.
All right, so first up, let's take a look at the track tips, sponsored by Sim Raceway.
Track tips, pit entrance etiquette, sponsored by simraceway.com. Before getting into a race, whether pit stops are required or not, you should learn how to enter pit lane. During a warm-up or practice session, make sure to familiarize yourself with its location. Things to pay attention to are whether or not there's a blend lane, the speed limit, as well as your strategy for getting slowed down to that speed. Where your pit stall is, how long it takes you to stop in your pit stall, where the pit lane speed limit starts and ends are all very important to saving time during your pit stops. Lastly, make sure you don't upset someone else's race when attempting to enter. If someone is following you closely on your in lap, it may be best to let him pass so that you enter safely and also to avoid a collision. If the track is crowded, do it as safely as you possibly can. Perfecting your pit entrance and pit stop can gain or cost you positions on the track. Don't wait until 10 minutes before the race to work on your entrance. Make sure you're the one gaining positions because you practiced. I'm Darren Ganti, and that's my track tip, sponsored by simraceway.com.
Alrighty, here we go. Going through our weighted rating scale now for Forza 3 by turn 10.
Starting off with some drag racing here.
Yeah, Sean and I have been having a lot of fun with this drag racing, and this is what is it, a 1990?
Yeah.
1990 Camaro that we built.
Z28.
We're like the Camaro boys here. But it's a great drag car, so we dumped a ton of, how much money do you think we got in that car?
I would say I'm 250, 300,000.
Probably.
And I'm nowhere.
Yeah.
We're nowhere.
Well, we got into the 11s.
11,
he got
7.
11. That's pretty much his car he's driving. So anyway, here to do our rating scale. We're just going to get right to it.
Yeah.
And first up, we're going to talk about physics.
All right.
Weighted rating scale again, 15 for physics, 10 graphics, sounds, tracks, vehicles, fun factor, force feedback, 5 for AI, multiplayer damage, presentation, and cost.
And before we get going, I don't know where your background is watching this show. You know, we came from a very elitist status, I would say, when we opened the doors of SRT.
Consoles were forbidden.
And, you know, I think a lot of people are going to be shocked.
You know what? Consoles weren't forbidden in my house. I was playing GT4, I had a PS2, but I didn't get a PS3 until we wanted to start covering them for the show.
Exactly.
So, always been console players, so, but we didn't make this show to do console racing, and now we can't, you guys can't turn your back on something like this. Forza 3 is definitely a sim.
Absolutely, and I think we've always differentiated kind of PC versus console based, and we cover them both and we appreciate them both, but there's always sort of been a subtle line drawn between them.
Oh, there always has been, and we even used to rate them arcade and not even include physics in some of those games like MotorStorm and stuff like that.
Sure.
So this is going through the full rating scale, and man, it's gonna score big.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's
physics.
Get to it. Great pick, great thing to say though. So physics, out of 15, we gave it a 13, and that's Sean and I scored this. I'm just gonna give you our average, but we scored it individually. We're just gonna give you our average, 13 out of 15 in physics.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that they really achieved well in physics is how much overall they brought into the whole concept. How many things they're taking into account. I mean, we talked about the clutch.
Yep.
You know,
400 cars, and they all seem to have distinct modeling.
They're all unique.
Tire wear, the adjustability of the cars, the telemetry.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see what's the tire, the contact patch. You can see the suspension travel. I mean, these physics are pretty amazing.
And maybe not as sophisticated as the top adjustable sim.
Right.
But
yeah, let's compare it to an iRacing or Netcar Pro, which I think, you know, or even an Arca Sim. You know, all three of those I think have great physics. Even R-Factor. I mean, all those have great physics. I'll tell you right now, we're going to put those through this weighted rating scale, and this is going to score right with it.
this drives like a real car.
Next up, graphics. Man, almost a benchmark setter. Pretty close. 9.5. We gave it a 9.5. Only problem that I saw in the graphics the whole time I played, Sean and I have been playing some multiplayer. I was on a track doing some single player with all 8 cars out, and all of a sudden I got major frame glitch, but he was sending me an invite.
During your race.
And I would
Which you
imagine,
can't control because...
I imagine you could turn those off, though, somewhere in your Xbox settings so you don't get invites.
Yeah.
But that's the only time I ever saw a frame glitch, just almost photorealistic. Not Gran Turismo 5, you know, we're going to be doing a comparison soon.
Yeah, there's some room for growth, but again, the whole package, I think every category of Forza comes to the whole package.
Yeah.
The whole graphics is just amazing.
Yeah, I think the only flaw I saw really in the graphics were like in the cockpits were a little fuzzy.
Yeah, a little pale.
Next up, sound. Another close to benchmark setter. Hey, man, the tire squeal,
Yeah.
the way that the cars wreck, and the crunch sound that it makes. Because I've been in a couple wrecks in my life, and I know that. And just watching TV and, you know, NASCAR, you watch any weekend, you hear that crumple, you know, that thump sound.
Yeah, that body-to-body rubbing noise that you hear. Not quite a wreck, but definitely some good contact.
Next up, tracks. I think, what, over 35 or whatever it is. Just
One of the best combinations I've ever seen of fantasy tracks and real-life tracks, which to me is fun. I love real-life tracks. We're very critical of games or sims that don't have real-life tracks. But this is a really, I mean, some of the best tracks in here are actually fantasy and things that are very
amazing.
like Nürburgring. I mean, when there was a near 13-miler, the Fuji track, and it was like, pick your favorite exotic car and just drive through canyon roads like everybody's dreamed of doing.
Yep. Yeah, and there's just quite a variety. And then even in the variety, there's different layouts for each one. I mean, like this drag, this is Sedona. Sedona's got this drag strip that we've been running. Speaking of drag strip, we're going to touch on this a little bit. Because we're going to talk about vehicles right now. 400 vehicles, just amazingly modeled. And like we were talking about, let's talk about this drag racing here for a minute. Sean and I started this little competition where we'd spend, we'd each give each other 25 grand to spend.
This was fun.
And on top of buying the car was only 6 grand. We bought this 90 Camaro, which you can see right here. Sean's got 2 stars on it because he beat me this night. The night we built this car. But 25 grand you could spend on any of the upgrades. Man, I love tuning these cars and adjust them. Sean ended up taking out all the weight. Sean is just banging the crap out of the gears over here. Sean took out all the weight, stiffened his chassis. I thought I'd go with wide tires. That was definitely not the way to go. Sean ended up just beating me by about a second, half a second.
And it's all about how you spend the money. And I mean, again, the whole package of Forza, that's part of the physics to me. How many different, I mean, I can buy different intake, different valves, different cams.
Turbos, superchargers, I mean, differential. I mean, just, there's endless combos. So where we ended up with that, there's a performance index for each car. And Sean ended up having a higher performance index when all was said and done. So I spent more money, got to the same performance index, and he was still smoking me. So it really comes down to how you spend that money. And where you got to spend it wisely. You know, for drag racing, you know, just stiffening that chassis. And he just put wider tires. I put like slicks on it. Anyway, we're dragging this on.
And despite winning, we're still really slow. So for any drag racing knowledgeable people out there,
help us with some setups.
Yeah,
here.
Where do we even start?
So
other than massive horsepower.
Vehicles, we ended up giving it a 9 3/4. I gave it a 10 and Sean gave it a 9.5, but you don't get much better than this.
No, I mean almost any exotic that came to mind. Yep, they had
it. We could drive it. Even just regular cars. I mean, there was, you know, one of our favorites, the Camaro. There was a 69, a 78,
a 79,
90, and a 2002, and then one of the
brand
new
new
ones.
one.
So just amazing selection of cars.
Same thing with Corvette. I mean, various years.
Ferraris.
They had the Dino.
Porsche.
Oh yeah.
Speaking of which, and top sim cars.
914 they had in there, not in top sim cars.
One of Sean's yeah. 914 didn't make the top sim cars. Sorry, Sean. Fun factor. And
once again, I'm glowing over a game, two in a row.
We both are. I mean, this game definitely has some flaws, but I mean, it just doesn't get much better than this.
No, it doesn't. And you mentioned there are some flaws, but again, most of the flaws that I found in Forza 3 were a result of they actually opened more doors or more things that I didn't even think they do that sort of made me feel like I wanted more. Like the drag racing, there was no staging or no red lighting.
Yeah, those were some of the things that was missing, but there was just so many other things, and the fact that we could drag race and do
it's amazing.
That, yeah.
And it's legitimate drag racing. And then even like the beginning of a race, it sort of jumps you right in. There's no real get ready.
3, 2, 1, you race. You don't. Not a standard countdown. Even on the drag, you know, you're not looking at the tree. I'm watching 3, 2, 1, go.
Go. And
I'm looking for the word go.
And that's where it kind of still feels a little gamey, despite very much being a sim.
So fun factor, we gave it 9.25 overall. Next up, force feedback realism. Here's where I think it got some really cool effects, but definitely suffers in some areas. We ended up giving it a 7, or overall 7 7.75. One of my issues with it, the slip point when you're driving the road cars seems a little abrupt.
Yes.
All of a sudden it just goes from smooth force feedback to slip. And it's just not a smooth transition where I think it would be.
Like there's a lump there in the steering somehow.
Now let's talk about this setup. You know, we talked about this earlier in the show.
Good time to bang some gears.
The 911 Turbo S with the 6-speed shifter. Clutch, man, this clutch, you know, we mentioned this is the most realistic clutch there is. So, I mean, that...
We have footage here. We drove without the clutch when it was set to needing the clutch. And, I don't know, we made probably 35 shifts before it just took about 5 seconds per gear.
To shift, yeah. It still would shift. We couldn't totally break the tranny. Couldn't totally break the motor.
Nope, but then we downshifted from 4 to 1.
We'll wait till we get to damage.
Right,
We're almost there. So there's force feedback. Like I said, we gave it a 7.75 overall. I gave it 7.5. Sean gave it an 8. AI next up. 4.25 overall. Great AI. Some of the almost benchmark setting in the industry, I'd say.
Yeah.
These cars react pretty well. I mean, they're not perfect.
Sure. And AI is tough has been proven by the fact that no one's doing it great. This is real good. They do race you. I've had some good inside-outside battles with the AI.
Tell them about one of your issues with it, the adaptive.
The weirdest adaptive. So I've taken this same car, put a bunch of money into it, really increased its performance index, and went out there in the exact same race that I was running in maybe 200 points lower, and the exact same guy.
The Red Devil.
The Red Devil. It's always the red car. Anyway, he was still the same pace. It seems that
you can beat him.
You can. Oh yeah, they're all beatable, and we're running at the hardest level.
Yeah.
But it seems that the back of the grid is always slower than you by a long shot. The middle of the grid is sort of a little slower than you, and then the front guys are a good challenge that you got to go run them down.
If you bring a knife to a gunfight, though.
Yeah.
So if you bring a 200 performance index car to a 300 performance index race, you're gonna get your ass handed.
Yeah, that's for sure. Even the slow guys might.
Yeah, you're not gonna beat the top cars.
Yeah, by the third lap they might start slowing up. So if you start nailing it, you might start reeling them in. But you need to bring a decent car. Next
up, multiplayer. Originally I scored it a 4, but then dropped it a little bit due to the lack of players. 8 players is the max. That's kind of a bummer.
Yeah.
Even though you can have some great stuff going on with 8, maybe do some heats. You know, where even if you have 16 guys, you can do, heats to get into bracket up to the top 8.
Sure. But with the quality,
or even I was going to mention before I forget, and then I'll let you get to what you wanted to. We were talking about doing an endurance race.
Right.
With 8 slots, and maybe have like Sean and I can do hot swaps here and race against 7 other teams that have 2 dudes racing doing hot swaps. I think that'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, yeah. What I was going to say also, even though it's people challenged, we'll say, with only 8 drivers, we've talked about the scenario of sort of the poker night, and being able to hang out with just some friends and set up some drag races for the night or some, track racing.
Very configurable.
Yeah.
And just plug and play, jump in, you add people to your message. You have to pay for a live membership.
Sure, but you have your invite list, so I mean, you can be very restrictive about who played in your sim. You can, and anyway,
so
a lot of
3
fun.
overall is what we gave it. Next up, anything else you want to say on
Nope,
multiplayer?
no, I'm all done there.
Yeah, we got to get this going. Damage, and we're almost done. Damage, presentation, and cost. 5 out of 5. We think this sim sets the benchmark for
Absolutely,
damage.
absolutely.
Between the tranny, we were talking about this earlier, the tranny damage, engine damage, the way the cars get damaged during the race.
The visual damage, the consequences, you know, overall it's still a little soft.
Yeah.
So it's not super critical. I mean, you're going to be able to hit a wall or two and you're not going to be limping home the rest of the race. But if you make it every lap that you're just beating up the car, it's going to become pretty slow and undrivable, and it definitely has good damage built into it in that.
Yep.
Visually, it's amazing.
Yep. Yeah, it is. And like Sean put it perfectly, it's a little soft, but it's still, I think it sets the benchmark. I think it beats out iRacing. I think it beats out a lot of these guys. It just, you know, the way they do the tranny and all that stuff. And it's just really cool. So 5 out of 5.
And also, I didn't directly say it, but we'll show it. The 4-to-1 resulted in a motor grenading, which no other sim's really doing it quite as well as this. Unfortunately, couldn't kill it.
Yep, exactly. So next up, presentation. I originally had a little bit higher score, but Ben, the load times are just a killer on this thing.
Yeah.
And we had to knock it down somewhere. I mean, this thing's not perfect. No gamer sim is ever going to be perfect, but load times are just horrendous on this thing. And I thought originally I didn't have a hard drive on one of the systems, and that was the issue, but it wasn't.
Yeah, and for those of you who are like fans of Dirt or Grid or those games with fireworks, explosions, and ultra excitement, and you know I'm a big fan of all of those, you might be a little let down. This is a very classy, I think is the word to put it, sim. There's not a lot of explosions and fancy
not a lot of
things.
hoopla and...
No, there's a great career mode. You're going through a calendar. It's really fun.
Yep.
But again, it's more refined, I would say.
Yes, it is. So 3 3/4 is what we gave it overall. And last thing, cost 5. Like I said to Sean, I don't even know how much this game costs.
It doesn't matter.
50, 60 bucks. I'd say anything under 100 for this game would be worth it.
Yeah, they won't charge that much. It'll be normally priced, but
I think the special edition, there's like a special edition that might be 60, 70 bucks, but I'll say it's worth every penny. This is not a rental. Buy this game. It comes with 2 discs. You got to load first disc, and then to get all the content, you need a hard drive, and you need over 1.9 gigs, I think it is, of free space to take advantage of all that content. So
one thing we didn't mention back about multiplayer that's really cool about Forza is you can actually buy and sell cars.
Yeah, that's
like,
really cool.
This Camaro, I spent 300 grand, and I'll never recoup it selling it in the game.
Yeah, but someone might want to buy it.
Yeah, it looks nice. It'll look good on the specs, so maybe I can get a good dime putting it on their little, it's their auction site. So anyway, and you can paint them up and everything. That's
Speaking
cool.
of multiplayer, I'm going to give my gamer tag, Darren SRT.
And I'm Sean SRT.
So look for us. You guys want to add us to your invite list and do some racing, man. I want to do some online racing in Forza 3. So anyway, that brings us to our total. It's going to be one of our highest ranked ever. And this is with our new weighted rating scale.
Yes.
89.
89.
So that's quite a score.
That's amazing.
I gave it an 88.5. Sean gave it an 89.5. Originally, we were up when I first scored it. I was up over 90, and I thought I was going to stay there. But then after playing a little bit longer, I had to knock it down in a few spots.
And this again puts it again. I mean, we haven't scored some of the other big sims in town, but this is one of the big scores that we're ever going to see, or right up there. I mean, I'm blown away by the number. I mean, it has its faults, but the overall package, everything that you're getting included in this is just, it's a lot. It's amazing.
It is. So that's going to do it. It's going to wrap up our Forza 3 review. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll see Forza 3, I'm sure, a lot on the show. We're going to be putting it up against Gran Turismo 5 when it comes out next year sometime.
I'll be building and selling cars as they don't do what I need them to do.
I was going to say one other thing, man. This is a Xbox 360 seller, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I would buy a 360 if I didn't have one already just for this game.
Yeah, definitely.
If I played it.
Definitely.
Especially with this combo, the 911 Turbo and this shifter. Man, this is...
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of which, we've got a special... The final version of this wheel has drift mode in it now. So the wheel has less dampening. And it also has this ABS feature where you can... Where when you push the brake to a certain percentage, the wheel vibrates. And actually, we don't have a set of Club Sport set up, but the Club Sport pedals has the vibrating brake. All of them will vibrate at a certain percentage of when you push the brake. So when you're hitting the tire threshold of braking, you can have everything vibrate.
Another form of setup. So for those looking for the ultimate setup, you get that dialed in. And if you're sensitive on that wheel, you feel right when they're going to lock up, and pretty cool.
Yep. So that's going to do it. Forza 3 by turn 10, 89 overall.
That's going to wrap up our special pre-launch party for Forza 3. I'd like to thank everyone for watching. Next episode, we will have Need for Speed Shift, as we did promise it on this episode, but if I can get the guys to stop driving this Forza 3, then you guys will get your review.
Yeah, it's like, as a matter of fact, I'd like to comment on that. Maybe if EA would have sent us that pre-release instead of waiting until everybody else out there got it, we would have covered that sooner. But I'd like to thank Turn 10 and Microsoft for getting us 2 copies pre-release. You guys probably won't even be able to get your copies out there for another week of this.
For making this special possible.
Yeah, exactly. So I'd like to thank those guys, and man, we were loving this thing. Obviously, by our scores, you guys can see that.
And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube
one more
channel.
thing. Forgot to mention, PSP, Gran Turismo, going to be covering
We gave
that.
you a little preview of that previously, and
also going to go through the weighted rating scale. So we didn't do that for that last show, but we're going to do that on the next one.
all right. And like I said, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can comment on the show, rate the show, comment suggestions, whatever you
And
like.
don't forget to go to our forum, subscribe to our forum, and go to the J Zone. Say hi. Yeah, say hi to
Waiting
Jessica.
for you.
A lot of people have been showing up so far, and some really cool comments, and we really appreciate
And I'd like to
those.
thank everyone for all the wonderful comments and for watching the show. And I guess that's going to wrap it on up. We'll let you know who does the best on Forza 3 between Darren and Sean. Checker flag is out, and so are we.
Promotional consideration provided by GameRacerUSA.com.
Make sure I keep it tiny. Just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Ready?
It's all